Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam. Ala Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da, habati fillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hayyakallah. I've received several posts, and actually they're they're delayed posts, or they're posts that I failed to see and they've been edited, but I just wanted to respond because I thought there could be some valuable lessons in regards to it, in regards to the response. And it is in regards to some comments made by the SP leaks, and also, I tend to get them confused, SP files, and I'm not sure if they're one and the same, but I do believe that they do have some of the same, they're a similar video platform, and we know that basically they are in, I guess, a YouTube platform, if you will, that have come together to expose Salafi publications and, you know, to mention and exploit their sins and their Hizbeeya and the traits that they view that are cult-like traits. And so they've come together for this reason. And the only reason I decided to address this, because I came across the comment, I think it was recently edited. And so the comment is as follows, meaning their comment, and then I gave a short response. They said, why have you dealt with SP leaks as though it is more evil than SPUBs? It opposes your claims to weighing up bid'ah and Sunna big time. Iman is qawlun wa amalun, meaning Iman or faith is statements of the tongue and actions of the limbs. He says, ponder on that carefully and it may become clear to you where exactly SPUBs fit. So he meant to say where exactly SPUBs fits. They are closer to you, not Ahl Sunnah as a whole. Khalid, this video is against you, not for you. That's clear to any sound-minded person who doesn't operate under mind-controlled jargon devoid of critical thinking. There's an abundance of errors in your video, and if you haven't come close to responding to SPUBs ever, as you have to SP leaks, as is very clear, this shows how extremely unjust and warped your perception of the deen is. Your PhD isn't in deen like Sheikh Tahir Wyatt. You are a layman who traveled, as you said yourself, and in all that travel, there's no real evidence of real knowledge or grounding in usul. You're not even fit to carry Sheikh Tahir Wyatt's book bag. Dr. Abdul Haq Baker is definitely more knowledgeable than you, has integrity and truthful. You should learn from him, as you are definitely not his equal in knowledge and experience and consistency. So what I did is I made just a short reply to that. And I said in brief, I said, my view is that SPUBs is way better than you. There are many individuals from amongst their dawah organization who have studied, and we can testify that, as in, you know, we've traveled and we've known many, and there's many students of knowledge. Some of them are graduates from Jama Islamiyya and otherwise that are a part of their dawah organization, if you will, or under their umbrella. So they have lots of tulab al-ilm who now go by the, you know, the people refer to them as mashayikh and this and that and the other, but that's neither here nor there. And then I said, as far as my higher studies degree, if they are not in deen, I'm not sure what they are in. Basket weaving, perhaps. Because basically my research involved intensive translation and consultation from the scholars, many scholars of Ahl Sunnah in Medina specifically, also in Hayal, in the field about topics such as the Khawarij, Takfir, and the Salafi Creed. Then if that is not deen, please explain to us what deen is. And I think we do need a jawab for that so that we know and understand what he refers to as deen. From what I understand, those are masail diniya, and some of it has to do with the usul of the i'tiqad of Ahl Sunnah. As far as being a layperson, I think that is a relative term. For me, I teach what I know unless your speculative claims and distortions of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah and uniting and propagating dawah with some of the treacherous ones who attempt to undermine foundation principles of Ahl Sunnah. That was a bad sentence. So basically, I'm articulating there that I have never claimed that I'm a scholar or anything like this. I've mentioned and referred to myself as possibly a tawil bil-ilm, a small student of knowledge. Definitely, I've been exposed to a lot of knowledge and a lot of masail and scholars, but that does not necessarily mean, that is not the natija, does not mean that you are an alim or this and that and the other. And so it's very important to know our level and teach in accordance with our level. So I think that's the most important thing when it comes to dawah and so forth, is teaching in accordance with the knowledge that you've attained and knowing your level and not going beyond your level, meaning giving fatwa and things like this about the halal and haram if you are not trained to do so and have not reached that level of knowledge. He then goes on and then I address, as far as Shifa here, I've never compared myself to him, which is true, or most of the du'at for that matter, which is true. And if I do mention other du'at from Ahl Sunnah, I usually praise them and say that they're much better than me. And I do that not out of praise for myself or to be humble, but just, out of my own view and conviction. As far as Dr. Abdul Haq Baker, my colleague, I have also no need to attempt to compare to his scholarship, and I have no doubt about his integrity and truthfulness, and do try to learn from him. So as you said, I do try to learn and benefit, and I benefit from my colleague. We always bounce ideas, and we benefit from one another. As far as your claims, you have little more than your emotions to go by. You virtually know nothing about who I am except through videos I have produced. And so I just wanted to put that out, even though it's in the comments. And I wanted to highlight some things about highlight some things about the concept of Hizbeeya and why it is a relevant and dangerous thing, even if you don't hear some of the tulab and others speaking about it because they feel that maybe it's been talked about enough, or they feel that this is what SPUBs has spoken about, so they don't want to be associated with them. And so it's not really about association with any group of individuals or a hizb, but rather it's about those things which are relevant for the Muslim community. So some individuals do need to know. Muslims need to be aware of not blind following, and not having blind prejudice, ta'assub, and not coming together based upon false ideologies, but rather coming together based on the book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Allah tabarak wa ta'ala says, "Fi kitabin mubin wa'tasimu bihablillahi jami'an wa la tafarraqu." Hold on, all of you, steadfast to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa la tafarraqu, and do not divide. And the rope of Allah, as many of the mufassirin they mention, is the Quran, and some of them they refer to it as being the Jama'ah or the Quran and the Sunnah. And those definitions do not contradict one another. So we call that ikhtilaf tanawwu', ikhtilaf by degrees or gradations, if you will. And so it's very important that when we come together in Islam, that it's based on the book and the Sunnah. And that is one of the problems I have with, which I believe SP files and SP link or SP files and SP leaks, that one of the core problems is that they've come together and they push forward mostly those people who are critical of SPUBs, regardless of what their minhaj is, because they have many people who are different, have different methodologies, plain and simple. They have some Salafees they'll propagate and they'll praise them only because they've been critical of SPUBs. And then they'll have other people who have their guns out for SPUBs and who come together and to speak about their sins and do exposés and debate with them and argue and these kind of things. And this is incorrect Islamically. And what happens is there's a tendency to make al-wala wal-bara based upon this. And this is clear and evident from even those statements. What would be relevance of mentioning my credentials and trying to undermine credentials and make comparison to Sheikh Tahir when I haven't made that comparison. I'm not sure what the relevance. Why wasn't it compared to Yasser Qadi? Why wasn't it compared to some beginning student of knowledge? Why wasn't it compared to an ant? I'm not really sure what the relevance there with Sheikh Tahir is. Likewise, my colleague, Dr. Abdul Haq, who's close to me, who we do our podcast. So perhaps maybe that's the point, but I'm not really sure what that has to do with the issues. And I'm not really sure what the relevance is with regards to the issues that you mentioned, as far as me not being grounded in usul and that I should learn from his manners and learn from his knowledge. I don't see the relevance. Also, you said there was a lot of mistakes, but you didn't give me one. That's another problem. So one of the things that Hizbeeya can do is it can blind us, and we just speak from our desires. So 1 minute, because I was at one point, I saw one of my videos, I think on one of their playlists, and I told them and other associates, I said, take it down, because that wasn't my intent. My intent was not to wage war with Salafi publications. You have misconstrued what I've said. I'm talking about anyone who falls under those traits. This was not directed specifically at them. So don't make a false claim and say Khalid Green says about Abu Khadija or Khalid Green says about SPUBs. No, if I didn't say that, then don't say that. But rather Khalid Green says about Hizbee traits, or whoever has these traits. That would be more accurate. And so that's why probably one of the beginning points of falling out with some of these types of groups and organizations. And so it's very important to have a tasawwur ilmiya, that whatever we're doing, it should be knowledge-based. You know, I can't speak about SPUBs or SP links or SPUB files without knowledge, without knowing what they say, without knowing what their group contains and so forth. So I can't start lying about you. So that's why it's very important that they should retract, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, any false claims, not because it hurts me, because it doesn't matter. We don't have any good between us, except for we're Muslim, inshallah ta'ala, and like this. But, you know, just for the sake of accuracy, and goodness. And as I went to and I looked at their various files on their thing, and it was a lot of Muhammad Hijab and Dawa, Ali Dawa, a lot of their clips, and, you know, a lot, you know, with, you know, pictures of Shamsi and pictures of different people who they oppose, Abu Khadija and others with gowns on and Superman capes, as their brother Haji as well did with me. And I think this is deplorable. For one, it has nothing to do with Islamic dawah. Yes, this is a trait of the disbelievers, that they do these kind of things. People who trolls and other traits which are not Islamic traits. And even they described what's his name, Shamsi, with these Yahud traits, and they had him with that's a great evil. If you see certain traits, talk about it with ilm, and you don't have to do caricatures and pictures. This is a shameful trait that we see from many of the youth. And again, we see it from these platforms, and we've seen it also from many followers of SPUBs, that they do this same type of evil and wicked, have these evil and wicked traits. And this is shameful because it has nothing to do with ilm, it has nothing to do with Islam, and it gives a bad tasawwur of Islam. You know, and as the scholars mentioned, al-wasa'il laha ahkam al-maqasid, that the means to something, it takes the ruling of its end. Hopefully I explained that correctly. So meaning, for example, if you use these wicked means because you want a positive end, maybe you find mistakes from a particular da'i, or you found from SPUBs, you found these wicked sins and cult-like characteristics. Instead of listing that and dealing with it ilmi, saying this statement, they said this, and this is, and what we see from Aghlaba, most of their videos or their publications, we find this in XYZ, dealing with this in an ilmi, a knowledge-based way, as we see from the scholars of Ahl Sunnah. We don't say that some of the scholars sometimes don't make mistakes and their desires become caught up. That's a human trait. But you want to avoid as best as possible, this is advice for myself and these guys, that we should, try to stick as ilmi as possible and avoid the name calling. And what we find is that the name calling of groups like SP Leaks and S-Files, SP Files, is that they actually end up doing the same thing that they accuse SPUBs. So they have big videos about Amjad, Rafiq, and things like this. And we know a lot of the evil and unjust speech that he has written in many of his materials and his refutations, as well as others. However, that doesn't mean that you should follow that way. Just because you find their mistakes, you don't want to follow, you don't want to treat a sickness with a sickness, because this is a core trait of Hizbeeya, and it's a core trait of the people of Bid'ah in the past. For example, when you find in the classical text, like if you go to Maqalat al-Islamiyin, which is by Imam Abu Hassan al-Ashari, rahmatullahi alayhi, and he talks about, when he talks about the Khawarij and a lot of these sects, one of the common traits that they had, takfir ba'duhum min ba'd, is that they began to make takfir of one another, even though they were really on the same methodology, making takfir of people for the major sins. They began to attack one another. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kullu hizbi ma ladayhim farihun, every group rejoices with what they have. So it's very important to be balanced as far as balance with knowledge, balance with your speech. You're not going to agree. That's not going to, because someone doesn't agree with you, doesn't mean you have to make love and hate based upon those, based upon agreeing with you or not. And these are the very traits that we see that has been, unfortunately, a great product, or not a product, or it has been a trait of Salafi publications for many, many, many years, that they, belittled people who differed with them, even if people were really on the same manhaj, the same study circles, and they discarded them and they did whatever it takes to destroy their integrity. We see that the same traits that many of the people who attack them take those same characteristics. So this is a very dangerous and wicked and evil and sinful way. And this reminds me of an Oromo proverb. And Oromo is a particular tribe in Ethiopia, the Oromo language group. Actually, I think they were the largest tribe in Ethiopia. And now the president, Abe, he is, Oromo. Anyhow, the proverb goes, he says that whenever you point the finger at someone, three are coming back to you. And I've always thought about this, because the biggest screamers of Hizbeeya, a lot of times, the biggest ones who say, "Oh, so-and-so is a Hizbee, turn your backs on them, my dear respected brother," in a gathering of people, turn your backs on them. And all of these things, a lot of times they turn out to be the biggest Hizbees, in that they call to them, they call to their organization, they make love and hate based upon it. You've talked about the noble brothers, you've talked about this. And we see that a lot of their enemies take those same traits. So replacing Hizbeeya with Hizbeeya has no benefit for any of us. And you get the same sin and the same sickness. You are spreading the same sickness. It is just based on the other side of the spectrum. And in fact, we find glaring errors and glaring mistakes when people speak about scholars like Imam Al-Albani. They try to belittle Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and they make all these, and the dawah of Tawheed and so forth. We find that is a shed, la shak, that's more severe than the errors of Salafi publication, who all of those du'at of Salafi publications in general, aglabuhum, that have studied and are teaching, that you'll find a lot of good works that they've translated. And you'll see they have brought a lot of good things from the scholars, even with their own wicked ijtihadat, meaning their wicked and mistaken traits of Hizbeeya in their ways of dealing with people. Yes, we've seen many people maybe even leave Islam and be repelled against the dawah, for sure. Yes, we've seen evil conduct. Yes, we've seen wicked traits that we only see from the little girl children in our society in America. Turn your backs, brothers, and all these kind of weird and strange things. Or someone goes to the wrong masjid and the brothers don't allow them in to come and pray in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we have countless people can write books about the wicked stories and the reports, the countless reports of what has taken place, and this character assassination is well documented. But that doesn't validate you doing the same thing, nor does having deviance and holding hands and making kumbaya and locking arms in tow with people who attack the major scholars of Ahl Sunnah and declare errors of scholars which aren't even errors, you know, maybe because they're misunderstanding in Arabic. I'm not exactly sure. I've seen some things on one of those websites where they're talking about Sheikh Rabi and trying to make him out to be a takfiri and, you know, just weird, strange things. So you kind of wonder about their usul, the people who did this analysis. And you also wonder about their Arabic competency as well. And you wonder about their fairness too, their just character and conduct, because if they were to look ijmalan, you know, in the books of the Sheikh and his speech and his tapes, they would find other than what they made claims. So it's so important to be just, even with your enemies. And so those are some of the things I wanted to highlight with regards to this. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions and stuff like this. So I just want to mention one thing before, just for the sake of, so we have a working definition about Hizbeeya, because that was generally my response to what I see from those guys. And I know people are going to bring out things with their comments, of course, because people like controversy. You see, I don't like to do these kind of things. And that's why, you know, I don't have 25 videos talking about SP leaks or SPUBs or SP files or any of their conglomerates or any of their brothers or Haji or whoever. I have a few videos about Yasir Qadhi that I've done in the past. And even that, I don't really like to do those things unless it's necessary. I don't abandon that. That's a part of dispelling knowledge and refuting Ahl Bid'ah and refuting mistakes that can spread and corrupt the youth. But it's so important to also be balanced and to also concentrate, as many of the Salaf did, with your own sins. We should be concentrating on our own sins. I know I have enough sins to fill the room. And as some of the Salaf used to say, if sins were a smell, you would smell me from miles away. This is the Salaf. You know, people who are known for their istiqamah and their ibadat and writing about it, and some of them known for it, trying to hide their ibadah. And they were saying statements like this. What about us who barely do ibadah and who make so many mistakes in the wajib and, you know, have so many sins openly and privately? What about us and our sins? So this is one of the reasons I don't like to get into refutations. And if I do, I try to be, to the best of my ability, and try to be as knowledge-based as possible and as fair as possible. And yes, I'm a person where our desires are going to overtake us. And I'm not going to lie, and this is not to praise myself, but I'll just tell you, because I want you to learn from this. This is something I want you to learn. I made rakatain before we did this podcast or whatever you call it. And the reason I did, because I wondered, is this really relevant? Is this something good? Is this going to shine light on something? Is this just putting gas on the fire? Is this something really relevant? You know, and am I doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I didn't want this. I could talk about myself. I could talk about my credentials. Well, not just my PhD and my master's. I studied here and I have certificate from here. And I have this from Sheikh Ibrahim and I have this. No, we're not going to do that. It's not about defending myself, but I want you to, especially those who involve themselves in the path of dawah, to really learn to harness yourself. And that is dawah, because ultimately, if I die right now, you know, we want to meet Allah in good. And we don't want to meet Allah having spoken about the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we don't want to meet Allah tabarak wa ta'ala on something falsehood. If you spend your time only with refutations hurt the heart. Let me give you another example before we get into what Imam Muqbil said. Is when I was doing my master's, I was writing extensively about, I had to go into the books. I listened to many of Faisal's tapes. I read the works of Abu Hamza Misri, his tapes, Sayyid Qutb's, his books. I downloaded and took so many books of Maududi and all of those people, because I was trying to illustrate a point. That was a part of my research question. I was saying that, hey, all of them are a part of this means of reviving the contemporary call to takfir. That is my premise. And I backed it up with ample evidence from them. but it means I had to go into their statements. And I asked one of the mashayikh about this. I said, Sheikh, I feel so bad. I don't like reading Sayyid Qutb's book. I bought a brand new copy of his tafsir, and I had to smuggle it in Saudi Arabia. One of the bookstores gave me a beautiful print. He got it from Egypt. He smuggled it in. He said, this is what you asked for. Beautiful volumes of Sayyid Qutb's tafsir, because I wanted to hear, what did Sayyid Qutb say? I don't want to hear, my source was not just Sheikh Rabi or Sheikh bin Uthaymeen or whoever refuting him. I had to go, what is this man saying? And and then what are the scholars, how are they commenting upon this? And why are they saying this about Sayyid Qutb? That didn't feel good. To make research on a Muslim's mistakes never feels good. It should not make you joy. You should not be happy to listen to Yasser Qadhi's 2-3 hour videos searching for his mistakes. For me, and I can just say shakhsiyan as a person, it doesn't feel good. I don't like that. I don't like really looking at anybody, but especially another Muslim, even if he's a person of Ahl Bid'ah. I don't like it. You should not rejoice in the mistakes. Oh, Yasser Qadhi, this happened to him. No, you should not rejoice. You should want his guidance. Yes, I may have a hardcore opposition with him because he is aggressively a mubtadi'ah. That's what I say. But at the same time, he's still a Muslim. He's still a human. He's still, there's a balance. And that's a part of al-wala wal-bara is that balance. It's not being excessive. What if he makes tawbah and removes all? What if Haji removes all of the evil that he said? I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about all of his false statements of rebellion and all his false premises and all of his harb against Ahl Sunnah, like people like Da'i Abdurrahman Hassan wa Kathir min Ahl Sunnah that he's trying to pick fights with, who he's not even like the fingernails of in knowledge. And so, he needs to remove that from him. And if he does, do we accept him or not? Of course we have to. Maybe the Salaf, some of them, they made muraqabah. They would watch them for a period of time to make sure the person was sincere before they claim them on good. But the thing is you don't want to be excessive in your detesting of anyone. That is the point of al-wala wal-bara, because you don't know. Someone could be, a Deobandi imam, whatever, an Ashari, and we already know our opposition with them in Aqidah, but we can't judge them as far as going to paradise or what. Maybe this guy has so many good deeds, and maybe he followed the Ashari creed, but he still, had, he was a Muslim. Maybe Allah forgives him. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives him. He didn't have bid'ah mukaffara or anything like this. And then you spent countless effort attacking. I'm not saying being soft with Ahl Bid'ah, but I'm saying you better put it all in perspective and based on the ilm and tasawwur al-ilmiyya. That's what I want to encourage. So this is what I want to mention. This is a statement. This was asked about to our Sheikh Imam Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, Allah yarhamuhu. It was asked about the concept of Hizbeeya, because a lot of people, I know that I've heard this from countless people, that certain groups of people are gathering together. Khalid Green is just like SPUBs. I don't know what their hujjah, I don't know what their cause, but no doubt our aqidah, we all believe, I believe like they believe about Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Asma'i wa Sifat. I also believe like they believe in refuting Ahl Bid'ah. I also believe that our salvation comes like in the statement of Imam Malik, that la yasla akhir hadhihi ummah illa bima salaha awwalaha. I believe like that. I believe that the ummah will be rectified by returning to the minhaj of the salaf. That differs a lot with Yasser Qadhi and his new minhaj and stuff like this. So yeah, I have many things in common with them. My issues with them is when they fall into Hizbeeya, if they fall into traits of cultism, if they follow their mistakes and their ijtihadat and their tasri', their quickness to make tabdi' and their ta'assub, their blind following. Yes, those are all traits of Hizbeeya. So we totally reject that, and we're totally away from that. That's why I am not a member of them, and I'm not with them, and they don't even regard me as Salafi. I'm sure of that. And so, but with that being said, you've got it. You can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because what you have with many of the people who oppose them, you see that they're trying to undermine the Salafi dawah. You see that they're trying to undermine the madhab of the Salaf. But so Imam Muqbil bin Hadi al-Wadi'i, he was asked, "Oh, Honorable Sheikh, some of the Hizbis accuse us saying that we do not know what Hizbeeya is, nor what it means. And they say that we consider Hizbeeya to be one who opposes us even in one matter. matter. And they accuse us of not dealing with the one who has opposed, you mean the mukhalif, the opposed, who differs in the best manner. And they are asking us for a definition of Hizbeeya. So can you please tell us, O noble Sheikh, how is one declared to be a Hizbee? And what is the definition of Hizbeeya? And what is the criterion for the blameworthy Hizbeeya? Because there is a, you know, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned about the Hizbullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ala wa inna Hizbullah humu muflihun. Verily the Hizbullah, they are the muflihun. They are the, they're the muflihun. They are those who are really, and Ala inna Hizbullah humu, wallah misa'an. Now, they are the successful ones. Like, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that there is a Hizb ar-Rahman. There is a Hizb, the party of Allah, the party of ar-Rahman. And he also mentions that there's the party of the shaitan. And this is what we're talking about, the Hizbeeya that's mithmuma. You know, coming together, making al-wala wal-bara based on your group, based on your clique, based on your boys, based on your publications, your maktaba, your whatever that you're saying, based upon your Salafi, your SP files playlist, you know, differing with you and agreeing with you. That's what Hizbeeya, that's a trait of Hizbeeya, making love and hate based on that. Instead of being able to say, you know, I differ with so-and-so on this. For example, I know some Salafi du'a that I see that they are very comfy with some Hizbis. I mean, like locked in step, and they greet them and love them and really have some ta'awun. I don't agree with my brother in that, but I don't rush to take, I know his usul, and I know that this is, maybe he has his ijtihad, maybe he has his reasons for this, and I may not agree, I may not think it's correct, but I don't rush to take him off the sunnah. That's what's so important, that we have to know where we can differ and where we can, and when it's not an usul, compared to something which is ijtihadiyya, you know, when it comes to ma'ayanin, specific individuals. So Imam Muqbil, he replied, he said, the answer, oh my brothers, and it was very concise after that long question. These people want from us to picture the Hizbi as being a monster, or that we picture the Hizbi as being a bull with horns. No, my brothers, the issue is, and the issue is an issue of ideology. So it's aqidah. It's manhajiyya, allegiance and a dissociation, al-wala wal-bara, as we talked about, allegiance towards whoever is with them and disassociation from whoever is not with them. People who don't fear Allah and they possibly warn from Ahlul Sunnah and insult them. SubhanAllah, I see this with so many of these people who oppose SPUBs. Not because SPUBs is the linchpin, but I see that the people have gathered together to attack them from all the stripes and all kind of sects and madhabs. So they come together and they'll accept one another's wicked mistakes about scholars and wicked mistakes in minhaj, but yet they will aim their guns as long as you have a common enemy. Your enemy is my enemy. And we see this with all the sects. We see this in politics. It's a political affair. This is a type of siyasa, and it's a siyasa which is at the core of Ikhwan Muslimin. This is a core Ikhwan Muslimin principle as well, as a jama'at. And Ikhwan Muslimin, for those people who falsely claim and say Khalid Green said SP Leaks is, or you know, said the Ikhwan Muslimin is worse than the Jahmiyyah. No, I never said that. So now you have it in Telelink or in live that no, I never said that the Qutubiyun are worse than the original Khawarij or this and that and the other. Okay, so you have to put everything in its truthfulness, and you have to be fair. That what I say is that those are, when we talk about Qutubiyun and Ikhwan Muslimin, which is, you know, the Qutubiyya is a branch of Ikhwan Muslimin or far'in from them, and that they have certain traits, but they are not united specifically on an ideology, whereas a sect. Yes, there's minhajiyya. It's usually masail minhajiyya, methodology in dawah, methodology in politics, and things like this. But they may, you might find some from amongst them who have the aqeedah of Ahlul Sunnah mostly, but then just in the issue of takfir and some things, they go astray, okay? Or the issue of, you know, declaring all the governments or attacking the scholars as their puppets and stuff like this. So these are, that's why they differ from a sect. So now you have it from my mouth. And I've said this countless times that I view like Jamaat Jamaat al-Tabligh, Jamaat al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, they're jama'at, which is different than a sect. A sect unites together on a common creed. Whereas you'll find from Jamaat al-Tabligh, you'll find grave worshippers. You'll find some that have even Salafi aqidah, okay, that just like to go with the Jama'ah. They like the brotherhood. They like to do the work. They are making a mistake, maybe minhajiyah, but they like, you know, they don't believe that what their core Deobandi and what Muhammad Ilyas believed in creed. They don't share that. Okay, so you'll find all kind of different individuals, some that have tasawwuf, some that have light tasawwuf, some that are extreme Sufis, some that are very political, some that have maybe even a takfiri tendency. You'll find everything in that group, but they are not a united sect upon an aqidah, like the Asharis, the Maturidiyya, the Mu'tazila, the Jahmiyyah, the Khawarij. And so there is a difference in them, and there's a difference in their level of deviation, as I've talked about countless times. Let's finish Imam Muqbil's comment, and forgive me for speaking so much and so many ta'liqat. So he goes on to say, he says, allegiance towards whoever is with them, and disassociation from whoever is not with them. People who do not fear Allah, and they possibly warn from Ahl Sunnah and insult them. And then the end of his speech, and he said, and from what the Sheikh also made, this is also a statement of the Sheikh, he said, Hizbeeya is allegiance and a disassociation. Hizbeeya is plotting and deceit. So he saw that as a wicked trait, you know, meaning Hizbeeya, this is the Hizbeeya, which is methmuma, which is sinful. And this is why I'm hard about these groups that come together for these reasons. If you come together as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَعَوَنْ عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوَنْ عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Ta'awun, cooperate, all of you, in righteousness and piety. Do not come together in hatred, enmity, you know, and enmity wa udwan. Did I just mix Arabic and English? وَتَعَوَنْ عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَوَنْ عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Ithmi, sinfulness, and hatred. Now, I want you to look at, when we look at SP files and SP links and all these other things, leaks, that what we see is they've come together in their playlist and their other thing, and their support for one another, and their podcast together, and their postings, for a common goal of attacking Salafi publications. Now, we have to look, is that something? Is that ta'awun? Yes, it's a cooperation. Is it ta'awun ala birr wa taqwa? Is it ta'awun with the coming together in righteousness and piety? Okay, so we need to judge it on that scale. Or is it coming together with sinfulness and hatred? Well, we know for sure that we can definitely classify some of their work as coming together for sinful or for hatred, which is sinful. Meaning you've come together because you hate SPUBs. So you're going to put a Yahud gown on, what's his name? Shamsi. You're going to put whatever on Abu Khadija and a Superman cape on him and things like this. That is a type of ta'awun in sinfulness. So there you go. There's your sinfulness and your enmity. Sinfulness and enmity. SubhanAllah. So that's why it's so important if you come together. If I were a part of something like this, not as a, for one, you don't make al-wala wal-bara on it, meaning someone doesn't like it, someone is sitting on the fence. Why don't you join us? Why don't you have a clear statement and attack them? No, I don't even have a fence. I don't even own a fence yet. I hope I can get one day, inshallah. I'm going to build one because I can build. But the point is, ahabati fillah, is you don't want to come together based upon love and hate. When I try to, if I do, for example, you see this limited podcast that I do with other people, we try to come together on something good. We don't come together for a common topic of necessarily destroying and unifying based on that. Because the people you see that I'm on with mostly are on the same minhaj that I am. When you see, the various podcasts that I've done, okay? We have the same aqidah. We have the same mashayikh pretty much, and so on and so forth. And we come together for hopefully a righteous topic about Islam and something good, something that's going to benefit people. And the questions that I can gain from these people who have more knowledge. Look at the podcast I did with Sheikh Mufti and Sheikh Tahir. Okay. He explained his, and I was asking them questions and engaging with them so that people could benefit. It wasn't that we came together to destroy someone, to destroy a particular individual. He mentioned certain things that are going to be controversial. But the point is, it's that ta'awun ala birri wa taqwa. You want to come together and unite upon good. You don't want to unite upon evil. So now you form a clique, a group. Let's collect all this. Hey, brothers, let's do some homework. I want you to get 45 statements of this one, and I'll get 20 statements of him, and you get 13 statements of him, and let's put it together to destroy his character, to destroy his honor. You want to be careful of that, because that may fit under ta'awan ala ithmi wa udwan. And so those are just some of the things I wanted to mention. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil, to bless us with ikhlas, with thabat, to bless us with ilman nafi, rizqan tayyib, wa amalan mutaqabbilan. I'm going to try to be very brief, not extensive in the questions. And maybe there isn't many, we'll just see. A lot of greetings. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah bless us and all of you. Ameen. And forgive us all. Ameen. But don't SPUBs do the picture thing. They edit people with red eyes. Yeah. I think I said that. I did say that. I said you have a lot of their followers and people who are affiliated with them who do the same thing and probably been doing it way before those guys. Maybe those guys learned it from them. They do the same thing. All of it's evil. All of it's sinful. No one from Ahl Sunnah accepts that garbage. I don't know any of the scholars who even know how to do that with the mouse and do the fancy animation. Maybe some of them do, but most of them, they busy with themselves with ilm. If you see, listen to any of the scholars that you see, that scholars that we love and respect, our scholars in Jordan, our scholars in Saudi Arabia, our scholars in Yemen, our scholars in Egypt, our scholars in Morocco, wherever they may be, you see they're busy with ilm. They're doing books and buhuth and research. They don't have time. You don't have, Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Al-Abad can't hardly read anymore, I think. He doesn't have time for that. He never had time for that. He was teaching in the Haram, teaching you the 6 books of the Sunan. This is what that's the tarbiyah we get. So it's shameful and sick and wicked and evil, and it's not from the madhab of the Salaf. So one of the things I also want to mention, while we have these ears here, and Sheikh Tahir and others talked about this, about monopolizing Salafiyya. One of the things I blame a lot of the people for, and I blame even Salafis. Wallahi, I've had this conversation with how many students of knowledge who have more knowledge than me, and I respect them way more, and are better than me in every way, bi'idhnillah ta'ala. But they still make a mistake in this. They still give credit as if Salafi dawah is defined by Salafi publications. These guys are graduates. I know so many graduates, and I have to check them. I have to correct them. I say, Akhi, no. Why are you giving them the dawah? This is our dawah. This is dawah to Ahl Sunnah. How many of your scholars did you sit in the haram with that said and did what they're doing? No, that's their trait. That's not the dawah to Salafiyya. So we have to not give those things. We don't associate the dawah to Salafiyya with making red eye pictures and putting people in uniforms and SPUBs and or this kind of thing, and calling people retards and stuff. We don't do that. That's not the dawah to Ahl Sunnah. So it's very important to put everything in perspective and give everyone their haqq. We love the madhab of the Salaf, and we will defend the madhab of the Salaf. When you attack SPUBs, that's between you and them. We don't care about that. But you have to do it with justice and truthfulness and knowledge. But when you attack Imam Barbahari's book, then you stepped on our territory. Because Imam Barbahari is a great Imam, a Hanbali Imam, and his book is well praised by the scholars of Ahl Sunnah. We don't care what Mubtadi as-Sughar, people who are very tiny in the scale. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and great Imams praise this book throughout history. Thousands of years of scholarship and thousands of years, 1,000+ years of people, even explaining this book. And you're going to tell me Qadi and other people, so now you're all shook up. Oh my gosh, I don't know if the book is really his. I don't know, is it Barbahari's or not? Let's undermine it. Let's talk about it. Let's throw it out. Let's get it out of the curriculum because you think you're attacking SPUBs. No, SPUBs doesn't own that book. Yeah, they translated it. Well, Jazallah khairan to him for that. And actually, that was the brother Dawood Burbanks. Rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasi'ah. So again, don't get it distorted. Our madhab is the same as far as Salafi dawah. We call to the book, the Sunnah, and the madhab of the Salaf. Those things which you find in an individual or a group or an organization which differ, they differ. They go away from the madhab. That doesn't mean they're automatically off the madhab, but it depends on what the usul is and what the issue is and many other things. And that has to do with the bab of tabdi', the bab of declaring someone an innovator when they leave the sunnah and when they're on the sunnah. So it's very important. Don't get the masail mixed. Don't get the masail mixed. That's so important. How can I donate? Right now, I'm not really, some people, sometimes they give to Athari Institute. And right now, I'm not super comfortable with the model of donations. I've never been comfortable. I don't like taking money. I do know we need money. We need money to do products. But right now, at least for now, I don't want anyone to donate anything right now. I need to, have more time to put into getting things ready. Then when I get to the next stage where I may need some assistance, then we'll look at that. But right now, it's on me. It's a time for my action. And alhamdulillah, we're getting closer to getting a little more stable and settled. So will you do an live stream where you can add some of your viewers? I'm not technological savvy to do a live stream. I think all of you guys are added. Aren't you added? I mean, you're here. Anyone could come on, I think. So I'm not really exactly sure what you mean exactly. SPUBs and co 100% agree on every individual. How can this be? Not one person from them ever object. I feel people with ilm needs to check them. But, Jazakallah khairan, brother Abu Umar, when you think about it, they operate as a group, and as some people want to classify them as a sect, yes, or as a what do you call it, a cult. There are cult-like moves. We can't deny that that some of the people move as cults, and that's going to depend on the individual. Some of the people are associated with that group, and they're not. People have different levels, so that's why I don't like too many blind or over generalizing ahkam, but they have a way that you better fall in line. That's the way they are. And I've talked to many people who are students of knowledge, who are either doing dawah on their own or what have you. And when they first graduated, they were approached and they gave me intimate conversations. Yeah, so-and-so and so-and-so sat with me and they said, I better get down with their program. And if I don't, then they're going to warn against me. And sure enough, how many of those brothers, how many splits do you have between the brothers there in the UK and in America, just because you're not down with us? That's a trait of Hizbeeya. We totally reject that. So that is something that's a glaring, shameful thing that we see. They're going to be puppeting one another. You're not going to hear. And that's one of the things you find, and why you find as a reaction to them, a lot of Salafi students of knowledge and graduates and stuff like this, that a lot of people are doing their own thing. And they don't, unfortunately, now we don't have the same kind of cooperation. Everyone is so scared politically. There might be some like, oh yeah, so-and-so in the UK is my brother. We'll do occasional podcasts or something like this. But everyone's scared of what have happened in the past and scarred, I guess. But the point is we don't have to agree. I just heard today, or it was yesterday, because I looked up something and I saw one of the brothers praising some of these things, who's a brother who I've praised many times and who I respect and I love as a sheikh in our society. But I don't agree with him at all. And I don't see the maslahah in what he's doing, but I don't have to publicly mention his name and I don't have to publicly belittle him. If I have this issue with him and it's a real problem issue, we can address that behind closed doors. No one even has to know. I can say, Akhi, when the next time I see him, which I don't see him, I don't have the contact with a lot of those brothers. And this is the thing, you don't see those tight connections, unfortunately, when brothers are around the country. They should. But, we should advise each other behind closed doors. We're not going to agree. And maybe he can justify and say, well, this is what I see as a maslahah. Yes, I know they are mubtadi'ah because they speak about great imams and they talk about this and they belittle them. But I see a goodness in them for this reason. Or it's something in the dunya, I'm weak, they have money. I don't know what it is, but, you find these things. May Allah forgive us and our brothers, Ameen, and guide us in them and let us not be a source of confusion for people, but a source of good. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Muhammad hijab has become so disgusting and arrogant. And again, you have to realize, think about this, whoever it is, whether it's Muhammad hijab or Ali Dawah, or SPUBs, what we see now in contemporary times is there's been a major backlash. For many years, SPUBs had the reins in the Western context. In Western societies, they had the reins of a lot of the Salafi dawah, that they were looked to as the core. Now people don't, I don't know what their following is because I don't follow any of it, but but it's not the same. There are so many Salafees who are on Kitab wa Sunnah, who totally reject them, totally reject their Hizbeeya. You know, may not totally, but, you know, unfortunately, sometimes the people get excessive in their hatred. But there's so many, I know so many Salafi du'at that they don't regard as Salafi and vice versa. You know, I know so many in the UK that this people I know good of. I know a lot of those brothers that, you know, I've mentioned their names, Sheikh Muawiyah Tucker, Sheikh, now, and we have Abu Taymiyyah, you know, in the university, and many others, and I mean Sheikh Tim Humble and Abdurrahman Hassan, and, you know, so many people that are, you know, doing their own thing and that are away from them and don't share that. So there was a time when they did monopolize the dawah, and there was a lot of fear. You didn't live it if you weren't there, especially in those early days. I mean, it was really, for me, at a very early stage, literally, I'm talking back when it was just, you know, a forum, Maktaba, you know, I left it because I saw some things that were totally incorrect that I knew from being there, personal experience, meaning I was in Yemen, I was in the other room, and then they made a post and they belittled and destroyed the honor of one particular brother who was there. And Imam Muqbil bin Hadi was in the room giving this brother a personal fatwa. Then they have the audacity from Birmingham to put on the forum saying he lied and he's this. Sheikh Muqbil would never say this. He's a liar. No, I was in the other room, and there were some other British brothers who were in the room. They had a private sitting with Sheikh Muqbil to get certain questions answered about studying in certain places that were non-Salafi places that they needed particular fatwa because of their personal situation. I was there, but I saw those kind of lies and I saw that exaggeration. Alhamdulillah, I was learning Arabic. I was able to leave it at an early, you know, I was able to just study. Go study. That's what I learned. You know, that's what you want to do in Islam. You want to get your tools. You want to go sit with the scholars. So that way you can learn and you can say, whoa, oh, wow, this is where my brothers made a mistake. And it's not to expose your brothers, but it's to be away from the harm that was, you know, that happened. So, of course, it's not having a unified choir. Because I like Sheikh Tahir, that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with everything he says and everything that he does. I'm going to agree with what he does and what he says that is on the book and the Sunnah. Okay, and that is what is so important, that we don't get so caught up in shakhsiyah. Someone will say, you praise so-and-so in a video, but he did this. Well, I still don't remove my praise from him, but I don't agree with him in this issue of ijtihad. He didn't become a takfiri all of a sudden. He didn't, you know, destroy the usul of Ahl Sunnah all of a sudden. No, he's on the usul of Ahl Sunnah and he's still propagating the usul of Ahl Sunnah biqawwa, with strength. But in this issue where he sees his own ijtihad, his own maslahah or a greater maslahah, he's doing whatever he's doing. So you may not agree with him. So it's not about being 100% you're going to agree. The mashayikh don't. But what you see from the most beneficial from amongst our scholars is they know how to deal with differences. Look at Imam Abdul Muhsin al-Abbad. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. So many fitna came by him when we were in Medina, you know, and prior to that, you know, when the fitna of, some of you may not be aware of some of these individuals, but Abu Hassan Ma'rabi, the fitna of later Sheikh Faleh, and many others, okay, and then later Sheikh Ali Halabi, and just all the fitna that transpired, and Sheikh Yahya al-Hujuri, you know, all of these splits that occurred, unfortunately. If you are being on ilm and fiqh and basira, you're not going to pull your chest hairs out and scream and cry and, oh my gosh, Sheikh so-and-so has been talked about. No, you're going to look at those things. If you're a talib al-ilm, this is what the talib al-ilm, his job is to do, is he's supposed to investigate these things. I didn't say, well, Sheikh Rabi is saying this about Sheikh Ali Hassan al-Halabi, I'm going to, you know, take his position like that. No, I really engaged without speaking about it, but I wanted to see what was said. What are the claims? Why did Ahmed Bazmoul write this book? And why did Sheikh Abdul Muhsin warn against even reading the book? I have the book. I have 2 copies of that book. And I wanted to see, and some of the things that were said were just totally not true. And how did Sheikh Ali deal with it? And I liked the way he dealt with it. He dealt with it respectful, and he was always trying. He just said, our brothers from the Ghulat. Then it became our brothers from the Ghulat, our brothers who are extreme. You know, so that's how he began to deal with it. It became, but you know, you saw the going back and forth. And again, as a student, you should have tools, or you're trying to gain the tools so you can see the truth. So you're not blind following. Oh, Sheikh Rabi said this, that's the haq. Sheikh Ali Hassan said this, that's the haq. Sheikh Abdul Muhsin said this, that's the haq. No, You have to, the student of knowledge, they're getting trained to go beyond that stage, to be able to look at some of these issues, whatever knowledge you have related to that science or whatever the issue is, that you can look on it based on knowledge. Oh, Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi said this about Sheikh Ibrahim, and Sheikh Ubaid jumped in the bandwagon, and this one, no, all those are my mashayikh, and they disagreed. But I found in my study, the haqq was with my sheikh, Sheikh Ibrahim, and Sheikh Ubaid was my sheikh as well. And I had respect for Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi. I'm not saying I don't necessarily now, but I'm just saying everyone's on a different level in knowledge, different level with maybe even respect. That's just the reality. But I saw what was being said about Sheikh Ibrahim. I investigated because I was in his study circles, and I knew some of the claims that were being made and that were mentioned to Sheikh Ubaid. And then unfortunately, Sheikh Ubaid made his hukm based on that, were not true. They weren't. I was there. I listened to what he said. I have his books and I have his tapes, and I was in the dars and I wrote notes and I see what he said. He didn't, that's not what he said. That's not what he meant. He didn't say that if you have, mistakes in manners, you're not a Salafi. So that's another point I want to mention up, because a lot of people tend to think that someone, he's bad manners, he can't be Salafi. No, someone can be Salafi, but that shows his weak iman. That's his weakness in faith. That doesn't mean he destroyed the minhaj. Someone can be sinful, because that's sinful. That's bab al-akhlaq. That's different than bab al-i'tiqad. And you have to distinguish. If you can't distinguish between creed and methodology versus masail al-fiqhiyya versus masail al-mu'amalat, how you deal with one another, then you need to go to Usul 101. You need to study Usul 101. So don't say because someone has a bad manners and evil, he may not be representative of the dawah, but he may be adherent to the dawah. Maybe that's his minhaj, how he understands Islam, but he has great shortcomings because of his sin, because he left out something good, which is manners, which is something which is wajib. He must do it, but that doesn't necessarily take him off the minhaj, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma min shayin athqal fi mizan al-mu'min yawm al-qiyamah min husn khulq." He said there isn't a thing that was heavier on the scale of the believer than good manners. And then what he say? "Wa inna Allah yubghidu al-fahish al-badi," and verily Allah hates wicked and sinful speech. The Prophet ﷺ said that. So that lets us know. He said, "Ma min shayin." He said there isn't even a thing that weighs heavier than husn al-khulq. So husn al-khulq, we know from this hadith and others, and how the mufassirin, ahl fiqh and ahl al-ilm or ahl hadith explain it. We know that fiqh fi deen. We know that husn al-khulq, it includes tawheed, in that it's your husn al-khulq has to do with your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, not just nice manners. So good manners is a way of translating it for us to understand the importance of manners, but it's much yashmal akthar min hada. It's much bigger than that. Okay, that good, the manners has to do with your adab ma Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your relationship and your manners with your Lord. Do you single him out alone for worship? That's tawheed, and that is also under the concept of husn al-khulq kaman. So my point is you'll find many people making mistakes. That's not representative of the dawah. And depending on their level of their mistakes and their mukhalafat, whether they are really on the dawah or not, those are the things. Al-ibr bi haqa'iq. The reality is the substance. Laysa bi musammiyat. It's not in the name, in the classification, and because he's with mektaba this or mektaba that, or files this or leaks that. No, the ibra is what he believes and what he practices and what he adheres to as a manhaj, a methodology. And one of the points I mentioned, because you mentioned about Muhammad hijab, is, again, so there's been a backlash against SPUBs. We've seen that over the past 10 years or so, major backlash, whereas before they had the last word, like what they said in the Western community, people just quiet, and many other du'ats, they were quiet. Really, you saw some of those cracks. Probably there was many cracks over the years, but I would say Shadid Muhammad is one of the strongest hard hitters that kind of started punching them back when he did his writing about the audacity of ignorance, which was a refutation of Abu Khadija and others. Yeah, he smacked back. He wasn't going to sit. Brothers from the street, he wasn't going to sit and just like lay down. You destroyed his life, his career. I know personally, we were very close then. And I know some of the things he went through. I know the suffering he dealt and the pain that he held. I know it. SubhanAllah. And so he did eventually, he started hitting back. And those hits, they smack. And later on, people began to break away from that. So break away from them, not from the dawah. That's the point. You don't want to break away from the dawah to Ahl Sunnah. You'd break away from any kind of Hizbeeya that you see, any traits of evil that you see. You don't want those traits. Nobody needs Hizbeeya. So again, sorry to go on a tantrum, whatever you call it, not a tantrum, but a go off on a whatever you call it, tandem or a point. You mentioned about Muhammad Hijab and you said he's become so disgusting and arrogant. I don't know. I never follow Muhammad Hijab, but I've come across some of the things, some corny, crazy stuff about Al-Albani and just some other evil stuff. So I don't really know extensively about him. I hear a lot and I just, I don't have time for that stuff. But what I will say is we also have to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees and hears everything. Inna Allah la yakhfa alayhi shay'un fil ardi wala fis sama. Verily, nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heavens and the earth. So people like this will live and die. They may have some fame, they may spread some doubt, but they will go and their doubt won't exist probably. But those imams that they speak about and try to belittle, their books are here. Their books and their students are alive and well and spreading around the earth. Their students and their students. So there's a legacy that you will not harm. You may misguide some people. There may be some youth that are confused. But what I say to you is don't get confused. Learn your deen so you have tools. You should know automatically when you hear someone speaking about mountains of knowledge and they're belittling them or just talking in a way that's really not befitting, you have to wonder, what is their intent by that? Why would someone make a podcast and start talking about Muhammad Abdul Wahab? If you don't agree with him, fine. Why would you aggressively try to undermine his dawah? Is it because you have a problem with that dawah to Tawheed? I don't know. Some of the people do. We see Dr. Qadi's on that. Talking about istighatha now, revisiting it, revisiting dua to the dead. Come on, man. I didn't make dua to the dead when I was a non-Muslim. Get out of there with that nonsense. And so, you see this. So what I want you to know is that these people will come and go, and they're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I wouldn't want to meet Allah speaking about great mountains of knowledge. I'm going to refute a great imam of Ahl Sunnah, or even if I want to belittle it. No, you want to be careful, man. You want to be careful because you're going to be responsible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will get exposed. He will get, many people will leave him. The more, if you become more disgusting instead of more good and spreading more knowledge, people will, eventually clear water is going to stand up and look good and be palatable, and dirty, filthy, oily, greasy, nasty, a dead rat that fell into it and some insects that fell into it, and your nose was leaking that day and it fell into it. Well, that's not going to be that appealing to the people anymore. So if that is what Muhammad Hijab is doing, so again, I'm not going excessive on Muhammad Hijab because I don't really know. I can't do that with knowledge and stuff. I know some of the statements that have been sent to me and I listened and I was disgusted, but you don't want to be excessive. You want to do it based on ilm and fiqh and basira if you're going to refute somebody, or keep silent. Yukun khair or liyasmat. Okay, so again, they will be exposed. Their dawah will not last. Ahl Sunnah mawjood. Ahl Sunnah is present, and they'll continue to go forward. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, La tazal ta'ifatun min ummati da'in al-haq. There won't cease to be a group from my nation that is open and on the truth. La yadurruhum man khalafahum. No one will harm them, whoever differs with them, or man khadalahum hatta taqum as-sa'ah, until the hour is established. Who differs with them or who tries to undermine them until the hour is established. Would an organized multi-generational family unit be Hizbeeya? No. So what I want you to know, and this is very important, because there are some people who have a misunderstanding. For example, I even saw when the statement where Sheikh Muqbil was asked about Hizbeeya, and he begins to talk about the means to Hizbeeya. He says that doing these organizations and organizing is a means to Hizbeeya. He didn't say it was Ayn al-Hizbeeya. He didn't say it was specifically Hizbeeya. And many of the scholars, like Imam bin Uthaymeen and others, explained this very nicely. And you see that this was something they accepted. That having an organization is not Hizbeeya. Having love and hate for that organization is Hizbeeya. Asking for money for your masjid or your institute is not Hizbeeya. It can be a means to Hizbeeya, but it is not. So that means the hukum upon that action is commensurate with its ends. So if you're raising money to have awwal awwal bara based on your hizbee organization or whatever, then yeah, then that's haram, that's hizbeeya. But if you're raising money, Ahl Sunnah needs to build a masjid, Ahl Sunnah is building a well for someone, Ahl Sunnah is building a Maracas Sunnah, a place to study the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, there's no hizbee in that. You haven't come together and making love and hate. So this is where some of the people misunderstand. They think that organizations in and of themselves is hizbeeya. No, that's not. And alhamdulillah, the mountains of knowledge have addressed that. So no, that's not hizbeeya. It's growing. I wanted to kind of end, but now it seems like there's a lot more questions. I'm going to do the best I can to be as quick and quiet and as concise. When it organized multi-family. Okay, no. Sarani, you were talking about Sayyid Qutb, which you did not finish. Yeah, there's no, I've written about Sayyid Qutb. If you really care, go to my research, and there's many people have written extensively about Sayyid Qutb with justice and talked about his many errors in, you know, his kind of his statements of general takfir that, you know, you want to, some people want to try to take those statements and say, no, he didn't mean, but he has countless statements where he said there's not a Muslim on the face of the earth, there's not this, Sharia, you know, all the societies are Jahiliyyah. What can you do? We, you know, in the context of his other writings and the things he said, it's clear that he was reviving that call to takfir. He doesn't praise the Khawarij, but that's what, he's a reviver, and all the, most of the, many of the takfiris refer to him. How can a talib al-ilm avoid both extremes and remain on the correct path? By relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and foremost, and not involving yourself in those affairs. So if you want to remain balanced, and you want to remain as a beginning, you want to be on the path of knowledge, I don't know any of the scholars who tell you to get involved in that stuff. Most of the, you know, alhamdulillah, so I say first, go study. Go sit with the ulama. And you'll find none of them are teaching you that. If you go to Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr today, he's not going to say, well, you know, I want you to get with the extreme guys, or I want you to go with the Mumayyin. I want you to, no, he's going to be teaching you books on Aqidah. He's going to be teaching you poetries on manners. He's going to be teaching you explanations of hadith and how to make certain dua and the fawaid of dua and the fawaid of tawheed. That's what he's going to teach you. That's how you stay balanced, because you go al-ilm, that you take knowledge, al-awla fil-awla. You take it by, you give it its precedence. You go to the most important issues before you go to the subsidiary issues. So that's what's going to keep you balanced and keep you away from nonsense. You know, you don't want people, I know many, and I had this even when I first came to Medina, a particular brother, I don't want to mention him because he is known. And he told me, and I thought that was weird because it wasn't like I was new to sitting with ulama. I come from 2 years in Haya with Sheikh Saeed. I'd lived in Yemen, sat with Tulab al-Ilm, and began with Imam Muqbil and others. So I knew, but he thought I was like a new guy in Medina or something. I don't know. I was new in Medina, but he said, basically the brothers or the Salafis sit here. And this was in the Haram. I was like, okay, Jazakallah khairan. That didn't mean anything to me because I knew I was going to sit wherever the ulama were sitting. I was going to go, oh, shit. You know, I didn't know, but I was going to go. I used to sit with Sheikh Saleh Al-Aboud, who a lot of Salafis left him for certain reasons, you know, that were more political in the university. But I used to benefit from his tafsir and his aqidah, because when I would make Umrah and when I didn't live in Medina, I used to sit in, you know, he'd be doing his durus were after Fajr. And he used to be the president of the Jamiat al-Islamiyah. And I used to benefit. I didn't care what the people were saying. And I would only see certain faces in his halakat. I wouldn't see a lot of the brothers and others. I didn't care about that. So you shouldn't get caught. Don't let people put you in a box and, man, you came all the way there. You better get that benefit, man. Sit with those ulama, man, and quit tripping. How can we don't, is Tahir Wyatt trustworthy? Yes, he is. But isn't he with Yaqeen? Yes, he's has a role in the, what do you call it? In the research portion of Yaqeen. So he's there trying to clean up Yaqeen. So I don't know other than that, but he's trustworthy for sure. Is there a two-part question? This is a two-part question. We Ahl Sunnah, we are name our men. Bin Baz, blah, 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 blah. this is a two-part question. If someone says, we Ahl Sunnah, we name our men, Bin Baz, Sheikh Rabi', Sheikh, I'm not laughing at Sheikh Rabi', I'm just saying the names that they put, Sheikh Muqbil, Imam Muqbil, Sheikh Abu Khadija, Sheikh Abu Iyad. The last two Muslims mentioned are, yeah, may Allah forgive us and them. This is, mostly, I think it's going to be someone who's ignorant, who's never studied. Why would you say something like that? I mean, yeah, maybe that's who they trust in their knowledge. They trust Abu Khadija, they trust Abu Iyad, and I'm not necessarily belittling them, but why you would mention them along with those, especially both of those two? I know a lot of Salafi publication guys that I was in Saudi Arabia with and in Yemen. Those guys, there's a lot in America and in the UK that's studied. Now, from my knowledge, I don't know a lot, but I know that those two brothers have not really, if you look in their background, you're going to find that they might have had some 6 months here, so many months they were doing Umrah and, sitting with Sheikh Ubaid and done some Dawrah, which is good. This is a part of Talib al-Ilm, and this is great. But it's, we got it backwards. We got it upside down, because they have a lot of brothers that I know that sat with ulama for 10 years. Like, I know, why didn't they say shit, and I'll just say this as given this more haq is with this, to say Abdullah Lahmami or Abu Uwais Tawil. Come on, Abu Uwais sat with those guys. Those guys sat with ulama. We were in durus together. Me and Abdullah used to be very close. He's the one how I got more information and more sittings with Sheikh Ubaid that were private through Abdullah. Abdullah was almost his next door neighbor. So, you got questions? You got something? Come on over, man, and we'll eat. You have lunch at my house, and then we're going to sit with Sheikh Ubaid after Asr, or whatever. Because we worked together. We worked together for many years, and we did Talib al-Ilm together. Akhi, there's a dars tonight. We remind each other. Sheikh so-and-so's got a dars tonight. Oh, man, we have a private sitting with some. Oh, okay. Akhi, can I come? Yeah, man, come through. So those guys are more haq to say they're sheikh. I don't know why those guys have been heads of the mektaba for years, but they're not. The level of knowledge is nowhere near the same. It's not near Abdullah. Has way more knowledge. And so many that are graduates. Abu Uwais is on another level, man. Come on. Those guys strong in knowledge. You may not agree with everything they say, and they may make, have some problematic statements or whatever, or manners or whatever the issues, you have issues with them, but knowledge-wise, there's a difference. But everybody wants to build up. Anyone can say, I can call this my sheikh. I can say Sheikh Miswak, he is so knowledgeable. And if you don't make bay'ah to him, and if, just stupid stuff, anyone can claim anything. And I want you to learn this qaida. Learn this, please. You can apply it to so many things in the deen. Al-ibra bi haqa'iq laysa bi musamiyat. The reality of something is in its substance, not its name. So if someone says Khalid Green is a takfiri, Khalid Green is really the asl, the head of Jama'at Tabligh, you can say, well, al-ibra bi haqa'iq laysa bi musamiyat. Does Khalid Green call to takfir? I always see that he's refuting. He did a master's refuting that ideology, So I don't think that doesn't sound right. Is Khalid Green SPUBs? No, I see that there's some difference in this and this and that and the other. Is Khalid Green this? Is he on Haji Minhaj? Nope. I see Haji says this, which goes against the book, the Sunna, and the method of the Salaf, and also differs with what Khalid Green is saying, because he's just going from there. No, he's not with that one. So again, people can say whatever claim they want, but the reality is going to be in what someone practices and believes and what they propagate. So we have to be very careful. Even if someone says so-and-so, if I say this is a sheikh, if I say this is this is water, make wudu with this, you're not going to believe that. You're going to say, no, that's a comb, man. Are you crazy? Because al-ibra bi haqa'iq, the reality of this is a comb. It's not something that I can make wudu with. I can't make tahara with that. Okay? So anyone can claim and say whatever they want. Negative, bad, good, bad, and ugly. Brother, very poor Arabic, weak in understanding of Islam, and unreliable in applying the statements of the Salaf on people is a sign of a deception. Is this a sign of deception? It's a sign of deception, but no, even if someone is weak in knowledge, that doesn't mean they're a mubtadi'ah. So you can't make taqleed. You can't mix the issue. So if someone is weak, maybe they don't even know anything of the Quran. Maybe they can't recite the Quran. That doesn't mean they're on the wrong minhaj. It means they need to work on their Quran. It means to correct themselves. So I think we have to be very careful. A lot of people, they want to make new classifications for Hizbeeya and new classifications for bid'ah. No, it means someone is innovating in the religion. It doesn't mean because someone is ignorant of something, or maybe someone is sinful in something, that doesn't necessarily mean, they're a Hizbee. It doesn't mean they're calling to themselves. It doesn't mean they're making al-wala wal-bara based on that. So no, we can't say that. We have to be careful of mixing those issues. Personally, I never listened to them. Okay. Can you make a video about Ashari Aqidah? I have, and I see a lot of Jahmiyyah issues. Well, maybe you can make the video. I mean, since you're studying their Aqidah, then I guess you're studying it from a critical perspective, but I would just say, be careful and make sure you learn the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah, you know, first and foremost. Now, so we've talked about it, and we talked about it in the books a lot. But as far as doing a research, and that's how I would prefer to deal with those things, based on research, like going into books, going into their masail, because you want to be just when you do that. The way the Salaf, why are you studying their Aqidah? Have you learned the proper Athari? Because I want to know. Yeah, that's what I would say. The way the Salaf, I would also say the brother, whoever Dilaj mentioned, that you should learn so I was assuming that you're like a talib al-ilm, you've been studying Aqidah, you studied Wasatiyah, you studied those books. Do not study and just mix yourself in and start studying. That's not the way of any of the scholars in Islam. That's the way of the Mubtadi'ah, that most of the time they studied the people of bid'ah, they wanted to weigh their kalam, they wanted to get to this, and then it led them to deviancy. So you want to be very careful. You want to study that Aqidah only for learning what not to fall into, or maybe you're refuting, or maybe it's in order to show sectarianism. And that means you're already grounded in the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah. But if you're not, you obviously don't want to, you know, I think I'm going to go sit with Jamaat al-Ahbash for 1 year and just see what they believe. You know what? I think I'm going to go do tawaf around the graves with the grave worshippers, really to get an intricate perspective before I study Tawheed. No, that's wrong. Be careful. Can you please confirm that Imam Abu Hanifa is our Imam and not the Imam of the Mutakallimin? Those are major issues. Imam Abu Hanifa is well known as one of the four a'immat al-arba fuqaha. Is there kalam that's very controversial from the Salaf? Of course there is, about Imam Abu Hanifa. But in general, the ummah is united upon his fadl, his excellence, and he preceded the other four imams. And so those kind of babs or abwab, or those things, I wouldn't even open those things up. You know, that is definitely an advanced issue for someone who's maybe doing to ground themselves, and who's grounded in doing talab al-ilm and wants to know and look at the athar of the Salaf and why they're saying what they said. Some of them saying about Imam Abu Hanifa, and why, you know, the jamhur of the ummah accepts him, you know, accepts Imam Abu Hanifa, even if, and it shows us, it's an excellent lesson that no one is infallible. Even if, and how many great imams had some kalam in their aqidah. Great imams of Ahl Hadith that had mistakes regarding the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but no one made tabdi of them for that. I'm talking about the ones that are known for Ahl Sunnah and advancing the Sunnah. So those are very advanced issues that I wouldn't even get into. You know, those are private issues you get into if you're doing durus, you're doing a talab al-ilm. Some of those issues are in my advanced courses in Athari Institute. Like I did Aqidat Tahawiyya. I finished it. It's finished. But it's very extensive. It's about 50 something lectures. Each lecture is like an hour. It was too long. I have changed the way I'm going to do Athari, but those kind of lectures will be optional, because I know most people are not going to sit for 50 hours to finish one course. But I did talk about some of those issues. Those are advanced issues, and that will be at level 4. That will be the last level that people want to get into, those kind of issues. And what's the moqif of Ahl Sunnah? What did some of the Salaf say, you know, about great, you know, these kind of things. So you must read about the Athari. People are very dishonest. They say, we have, if you go to the explanations of Aqidat al-Wasatiyah, people don't really need to know the intricacies of the sects. They don't need to know all those intricacies. They need to know what the belief of Ahl Sunnah is. Okay, that was the way that the scholars in the past, they taught this. They didn't teach to the beginning. They didn't have intricate durus about the Mu'tazila. But we find those statements of the Salaf refuting them, because they were refuting that for the people, but also for especially the other scholars and other people. You know, these are scholarly discourses, or because those bid'ahs became widespread in those areas. But it's not for everyone. Someone's in the UK, someone's in, you know, in America or in France, and they haven't studied the Aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah, and you're going to get into, they know everything about the Mu'tazila and the Jahmiyyah and this and the Khawarij, but they don't know much about tafsir of Surah Al-Fatiha or something. No, that's not the way that you study. Those things are advanced sciences. That's why when they study those in a lot of universities, Islamic universities and institutions, you see that the class is a class devoted to sectarianism. Ask those brothers who graduated from Jamia Islamiyah who in Aqidah, that they took those like sectarian 101 classes. I've taken those kind of classes before, classes that are a firq, the class about sectarianism. So then you study this sect and this sect and this sect, and we talk about their leaders, and you talk about their main points of Aqidah. That is not something you would teach generally in the masjid to everyone. You would only do that for people who are really students of knowledge, who need to know that. But rather, you would teach the people what the pure Sunnah and Aqidah is. That's what the common people need. So it's different levels. That's why you don't want to just busy the people always with very advanced issues. You want to do like the Rabbaniyun, as Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma said, that the Rabbani is the one who teaches the people the small knowledge before the big knowledge. Basically, or kama qal. If you guys can exchange emails, because you guys are going back and forth with so much stuff, so we can't find where questions are and stuff like this and what's going on. So I'm going to miss some questions. I know. We'll quickly try to look at a few things, and then I need to go because I wanted this to actually be very short. Bid'ah gets information against Muhammad ibn Wahhab. Super major big issue. So I would just say, if you have, I'm sure there's English sources that talk about these things, and that has to do a lot with the history. There's so much to say about the controversy of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala. Too much. Because there's so many different sources about his life. If you read from the Ottoman perspective, and maybe some of the ulama there, you'll find different kalam. And then you read about from the scholars in Najd, or you read about from other scholars in certain parts of what is contemporary Saudi Arabia, or in Yemen, or you'll find so much controversy, some that is hearsay, some that is, you'll find all kind of controversial stuff. So of course, this is why. I have a question about Sheikh Yahya Rodas. I've never, ever heard of him in my life. I have never even heard of him, so I don't know who he is. I just want to verify Troy is upon same thing as SPUBs, right? Because they are the only Salafi masjid that I know near me in Canada. Well, we're not warning you to not go there, but you want to be careful of if people are busying you with that which has no benefit. If they're busying you with anything that it's just controversy, and they're not teaching you Aqidah, they're not teaching you the madhab of the Salaf, and they're teaching you only to attack people and attack people's honor and controversy and think, then you don't want to be in a sitting like that. You want to be sitting as good. So if you're gaining good there, gain good there. Yes, they're very much affiliated. They are under Salafi pubs. At least they were in the past. I don't know what they're doing now. Bad Arabic. There are little kids. Wow, that is horrendous. That's horrendous. That's all I can say. Little kids online talking about Imam Abu Hanifa. That's horrendous. What can you say other than that? Rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatin wasi'ah. How should one use the miswak? Use it whenever you want. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned لولا نشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بسواك عند كل صلاة or عند كل wudu, or كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, if I wasn't fearful of my nation, I would have ordered them to use the sawak at every prayer. And there's so many narrations of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam talking about the fadl of miswak. It's bikethra, mutawatir. So use it any and all the time. Oh, that's huge. Assalamu alaikum from Sweden. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Which part of Sweden are you anyway? I've been to Gothenburg. What is the difference between ilm, kalam, and philosophy? Also huge things, but ilm kalam is, you could say, is sort of influenced by philosophy. So ilm kalam is not going to say Socrates said for the most part. Ilm kalam is going to be taken somewhat from the ways of argumentation of the philosophers, their methodology of argumentation and thinking, that you need to reflect on the creation before you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need to reflect and challenge your ideas. Okay, these are the kind of that ilm kalam usloob, if you will. So it's taken, you could say, from philosophy, but those are still intricate where you need to really do research if you're really concerned about those kind of differences and getting in depth. Do you have to reach a certain level of Hizbeeya to be off the Salafi together, or can someone be upon Hizbeeya but still be Salafi? That is actually a good question, which is funny, and I have asked Mashayikh about this. We asked Sheikh Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab al-Aqil in Medina, and I may have asked other Mashayikh. I know I've asked Sheikh Saeed this question too. The bottom line is, okay, it's as if, for one, the issue of takfir, the issue of tabdi', the issue of Hizbeeya, which is basically you're declaring someone that they've fallen into bid'ah or have traits of bid'ah. There's a difference between having traits of kufr and being a kafir. There's a difference between having some bid'ah or falling into bid'ah and being a mubtadi'ah. Okay? And there's ample adillah, and I would advise those who have Arabic, because I don't know of anything extensively written in English about this. But what I'm so thankful. My Sheikh Ibrahim Rahili, hafidhullahu ta'ala, he has a beautiful, I have 2 copies, by the way, I printed, but they're all in my mektaba. No, actually, I may have a copy here. And anyhow, this is a recent book he's done in the past year, and it's part of a bigger book he's doing. Anyway, it's all about that issue of the wabit of tabdi', the criterion for declaring someone to be an innovator. And so we see that someone, and there's so many statements, he brings a lot of beautiful statements of the Salaf and of course, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, because he really extensively kind of detailed these issues, whereas the Salaf didn't talk about it in quite the same way. And that's why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim are held so in high esteem as like reviving the madhab of the Salaf, because they detail, you don't find those kind of details in the madhab of the Salaf. You find those narrations, boom, boom. Shaykh al-Islam is looking at this from hundreds of years later, or 1,000 years later, or what have you, or hundreds of years, or however, whenever he lived, rahmatullahi alayhi, about 1,000 years later, or what have you. And, he is digesting, getting those usul, getting those qawaid and those dawabit from the madhab of the Salaf. He's reviving it and calling to it, helping to codify it even more. So the point is that Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah mentions, for one example, a statement where he says, not everyone, laysa kullu man yaqa fi kufr yakun kafir. Not everyone who does an act of disbelief is a disbeliever. That's so important, that qaida, because it also applies, not everyone who falls into bid'ah is a mubtadi'ah. And that's why the mashayikh, if you tried to apply it and said that everyone who does a bid'ah, everyone who does an issue, there would hardly be that many Muslims left, or that many people would be sound left, because there are great imams that have fallen into an issue of bid'ah, but no one declared them to be a mubtadi'ah because they weren't upon maybe it was something that wasn't in their usul, or maybe it was something that they were excused for. Maybe it was something, they weren't a caller to it. There's various reasons. And so this is one of the things Sheikh Ibrahim details in that. Also his PhD, which is 2 volumes, and we studied it from the beginning to the end. From the beginning to the end, 2 volumes. 56 lessons we had in that book. And it's called Mawqif Ahl Sunnah min Ahl Bid'ah wal Ahwa. It's called the position of Ahl Sunnah regarding the people of innovation and desires. And I'm thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have been able to go through that book from the beginning to the end. That's why those kind of issues are a little bit more passionate to me, because that was something when I was in Medina, that was kind of the tarbiyah I guess I had. I'm not saying it was good, but that's, those issues of takfir, because that's the generation I came from. And that's so I wanted to know about those issues. And alhamdulillah, to be able to sit with Sheikh Ibrahim from Dars al-Awwal to Dars Sitta wa Khamsun, to the 56th lesson. Allahu Akbar. And he talks about those issues. So I hope that answered your question, because I get off on tangents. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me. Should avoid starting Islamic communities based on the Quran? Should we avoid starting? No, we should not avoid. We need to start our communities. Our brother Sheikh Sajid, he mentions Assalamu alaikum, about to rewind and watch from the beginning. Much love. Keep up the good work. Allah yubarak fik. Wafaqna wa iyyakum. Allah yubarak fikum, and jazakallah khairan, and keep up the good work yourself as we benefit. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we benefit from you. Or is it more harm to the Muslims in America? No, we need Muslim communities. We're seeing a lot more things, and I definitely need to go. But a lot of these are comments. I don't know. Do you know about Yahya Roda? No, I don't. I told you I don't know who he is. Never heard of him. Brother ABC made a silly mistake, and I promised Allah I wouldn't go back to that major sin. Happened from the mistake I made. Please make dua for him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you to remove the sins from you. Bless us and you. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. The Mubtadi'as attack on imams and highlighting the mistake why they have correct aqidah is like the Shia attack of the Sahaba. Yes, it is. There's a similarity. Abbas, Madkhali MBS are creating the city of Nome, which allows alcohol-baked beach cinema. Yet this idiot, well, Allah understand. You could have at least said, yet Khalid Green. It's better to not, say the bad, attack people like that. Remain silent on this. So yeah, I think that probably planning to take his female family there. See, I mean, you get into things you really shouldn't speak about. Don't talk about my female family or even allude to it. It's just better, And I don't think you'd say that to my face. And I always invite those people who have these kind of lip service and slobber to say it to my face. So that's number one. Number two, what can I say? We, again, the position of Ahl Sunnah, which has always been there, is that Ahl Sunnah does not support anyone in sin. It means the leaders, it means the scholars, it means our mothers, it means our fathers, it means our grandmothers, and it means our grandsons and our whatever. You don't support anyone in sin. That's sinful. And hopefully that should explain right there. So as far as talking about the sins that go on in any of the Muslim lands, I have to look at what's the benefit. I think Abbas Abdullah is probably in the UK or in America or somewhere. I mean, tell me, is that going to help you make Fajr and stuff? I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe you'll get up and you say, man, you'll curse MBS, and then you'll get up and you'll pray Fajr on time in the masjid. So maybe. I don't, my experience, I've seen most of those guys that speak about that. A lot of times they'll have open sins, and waste their time. But then there's people who may not have open sins, and they may do that. But again, you got to look at, is it beneficial? Rather, my position is this, and I'm going to make dua right here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide MBS, forgive him of his sins, guide him to lead Saudi Arabia into khair, and not to be a source of testing and destruction of the Bilad al-Tawheed. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. And that's the way of the Salaf. Stories from Bani Israel. Where disprove this? How to reconcile with the hadith of Umar, reading from the Torah, where the Prophet disapproved of this, and the hadith where he allowed narrating stories from Bani Israel. Those stories from Bani Israel, those that have muwafaqa with the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, those things, that's what I understand. is that those things which have agreements with the Quran and the Sunnah. But if it's something that has no agreements, then of course you leave it. You would be away from it. And so that doesn't mean that we involve ourselves in the stories of, that has a particular context. And that requires going into the explanation of Ahl Hadith. So we don't have those books right now to be able to go in there. But that's what I understand from that. Can you tell us on somebody movement? Khadiza, I don't know what movement that is. A lot of people are putting a lot of comments. Extreme Sufis. He goes out calling anyone disagreeing with Khawarij. Shouldn't act like people we criticize. Go to the Sunnah. Abdurrahman.org has the Usul al-Sunnah book and commentary on him. On who? I'm not sure. Follow him and his students like Imam Barbahari. Refutes Kulabi and Ashari. If a sheikh delivers lectures, lessons, khutbahs only in English, translated books, and they hardly use any Arabic for being weak or fear of making mistakes, should these sheikhs be avoided? No, they shouldn't be avoided. He's being cautious and he knows his level maybe. Maybe he doesn't know Arabic, but he's teaching you. As long as the main thing with teaching is teaching to the level of your ability. The reason you might hear me sometimes use more Arabic, and my Arabic is far from perfect, is because it helps me practice. And sometimes I feel the joy when I'm reading an Arabic text and it gets me more excited, and then I translate it and it just has more powerful and meaning for me. And then hopefully that's articulated to you. So it's not about showing off, it's not about this, but I like it. And that's what keeps me from forgetting Arabic. Because if you don't read it and you don't practice it, you don't teach it, you will forget. So no, I say avoid those people who are not calling you to the book and the Sunnah. And if they're talking about things way above their level. Completely unrelated topic. However, do you have any videos on becoming a new parent? No, not necessarily, but it's so important, the tarbiyah. But I do have some talks that we've talked about just in general, tarbiyah, the importance, because it's so important to raise your children. And we'll end with this. The most important thing with your children is be there their whole lives. And I will even advise those people who go away and do talab al-ilm, I would advise you to not do that, especially for extensive time. Sometimes people make divorces, they divorce their wives. This happens so common, especially in my time, but probably even now there's a lot of youth. They want to go study in Medina. They want to go study in Yemen. They want to study. They don't have enough money to take their family. They leave their family. Maybe it causes a difficulty on the wife. Maybe they divorce. Maybe they're not there for their children because they divorce. These things are big problems because you will find the end result most of the time. Children need their mothers and fathers as much as possible. Wallah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Let me end with a story. And this is actually something I just watched yesterday because it's to a place that I'm going to be living perhaps soon. And it's a gang, unfortunately, gang in the cartels infested area. And so this woman, she was raised a little bit by her mother. When she was a child, her mother threw her in the bathtub. She clawed her back, threw Clorox on her back. She dragged her in front of the church and by her hair and cut her hair off with like a butcher knife. Can you imagine your hair getting sawed off with a knife from your mother? And all of these horrendous things she was articulating. She's only in her early 20s with teary eyes. And so that made me think of how important it is to have parents and how important for parents to be righteous and good and kind and gentle. And not everyone is afforded that. There are some people who are majorly abused. Can you imagine? I don't want to, I don't know what everybody's situation, but there are so many sisters that have been unfortunately abused sexually by their fathers, uncles, grandfathers, this, that, uncles, whatever, this and that and the other, relatives. This is an evil plague. And the scars that people do to people. So you have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you're blessed to not have this kind of evil, and you have to be a source of goodness and light to people who maybe have experienced this. So that was just a powerful lesson. I mean, it was so moving, subhanAllah. And it just made me think, sometimes those are the people you're interacting with to give dawah. You don't know what people have had as a background. Some of the people have had the hardest lives, man. Some of the reverts you can, and even people who are born Muslim, some of them have been abandoned, dogged, beaten, damn it, left for dead, shot by people and left for dead. And then they survive, even from their own family members. So you never know what a person has been through. And it's very important to keep that in perspective. وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Yes, it's not permissible to call people to medkhali or medkhaliya. That's not permissible. And I know the term, and that's why I just call people to the book and the Sunna. And I'm not really exactly sure what medkhaliya is. I guess if you mean to blind follow Sheikh Rabi, is that what you mean? Of course, we shouldn't blind follow anything. So we don't call people to blind follow Umar bin al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, although he has more right to be followed than others. You know, we don't advise anyone to start a new madhab. I know most of the people who use the term medkhaliya, I've never seen anybody from Ahl Sunnah use it. Nobody that I would judge to be Ahl Sunnah. I know a lot of Arabs that use it. There are always mubtadi'a hizbis that use it. I don't know any of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah that use it, even if they differ with Sheikh Rabi' on certain issues or what have you. I don't know anybody who uses that evil laqab. So and uses it in that way. Madkhaliya is a tribe. It's a tribe of thing. And there's just some well-known scholars in contemporary times, especially Sheikh Rabi' being at the head of them, Sheikh Zayd Madkhali and Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi and others who are known from that tribe. So I think it's very important to not to focus on the issues and not focus on names and so forth, and not focus on name callings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Almighty to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.